Jake Stuart with the National Sports Media Association. Today, I'm joined by Oregon Sportscaster of the Year, AJ McCord. AJ, thank you so much for being here and congratulations on your award.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to receive the award.
Absolutely. Well, first off, I want to talk about, you're a sportscaster for KOIN-TV. I just noticed how much diversity you have in your coverage. You've covered everything from the Sochi Olympics to Bally sports car racing to Arkansas sports. What would you say, what goes into your coverage and what, makes you want to cover so many different things?
For me, it always comes back to the storytelling and telling the story of the human being underneath your team's favorite jersey, whether that jersey is being worn by a race car driver, by a football player, by a WNBA player, whatever it is. For me, sports and sports broadcasting just has always come back to the story of it and what we can all sort of the common humanity, I guess, if you will, in all of us. And I think sports is something so amazing because we're also drawn to these athletes and what it takes to get to where they are. But then when you talk to them, you recognize there's so much that we have in common. And I think that's one of the things that I love about sports is that it brings so many people together from so many different walks of life. And my job, I feel, as a sports broadcaster is to bring you to the game, make you feel like you're there, and then also to just provide a space for these athletes to share their stories and to be who they truly are.
Absolutely. And I love the way you put it too. It just goes beyond the box score, beyond the wins and losses. There really is a story behind every single game. Well, AJ, this is your first award from the National Sports Media Association. What does it mean to you?
It means a ton. I was very surprised when I found out because there's so many amazing sportscasters here in Oregon. And I was honored. I mean, still am a little bit at a loss for words. I put so much of myself into my job and into all of my jobs and all of my stories that it felt so sweet to have that validated and to also just feel like not just my work, but then that means all the stories that I've been telling have had an impact, right? And so it goes back to just the stories having an impact on people. And I think that it's really easy to accept this award and feel like, oh, great, but it's a team award, right? I have a wonderful co-host at 1080 and Dusty Hara. I have some amazing co-workers at KOIN. My photographer, Brian Watkins, is somebody that makes every single story come to life. I literally could not make it on TV without him. He's a fantastic photographer, editor. He makes everything just make more sense, and then have some wonderful co-workers at KOIN. And so, it's an honor.
I'm curious, what brought you into the industry and how did you get to where you are today, AJ?
I shouldn't say always, but I've always been an athlete. That's for sure. I started out in gymnastics when I was 2 or 3 and then stuck with that until I was 18. But along the way, I played everything else under the sun: soccer, football, volleyball, basketball. I surf, I hike, all of the above. So I've always been drawn to sports and it's always been a huge part of my life. And I remember when I was watching an NFL game with my family one Thanksgiving when I was in high school and seeing some of the women on the sidelines and realizing, oh, there's a space for women in sports. And that was the first spot that I really saw a woman have a space for herself in the sports world. And so from there, I figured that's exactly what I want to do. And again, what I was drawn to about the sideline reporter is that she was telling us something that we didn't know about the human being, right? Like the guys in the booth are doing the X's and the O's and talking about the plays, but she went beyond the game. And so that's what I've always been drawn to. And that's how I got into it, was just starting to figure out how I can tell stories within the sports space.
We've been able to cover, simply so many different sports spaces. Can you tell our listeners maybe about an event that stands out to you that you were able to cover?
Oh man, there's so many. I've been so lucky to, so blessed to be able to cover so many. I've gotten to cover the last 2 Super Bowls, which has been amazing. Also very weird in terms of they're abnormal Super Bowls with COVID and everything that's gone on. I've gotten to talk to some amazing women in the sports space who are just blazing trails and making a massive impact. Satu Sabali, Sabrina Ionescu, a few of them that come to mind. I've also gotten to touch base with a lot of Olympians like Jordan Childs and Nick Gepper and Sean Fitzsimons. And so as a gymnast, obviously those ones mean a lot to me because it ties into what I always wanted to do. And so I also gotten to cover some really great, the Thorns, the Timbers, Ducks, Beavers, Seahawks, like we cover it all here. And so it's been really, really fun to spread my wings and to, cover pretty much anything and everything under the sun.
That's so awesome. You brought up COVID-19 a minute ago. How much did your work change as a sideline reporter as a result of the virus?
I mean, it changed drastically for all of us, right? It didn't just change our jobs, it changed our world, it shifted our perspective. And so what I found was that it became even more important to hone in on my why in this industry, right? It became even more important to hone in on what I knew I wanted to do in this space, which is create that space to have conversation, to have nuanced conversation about matters that go so far beyond the field or the court or your field of play. And that really, I don't want to say isolated, that really highlighted to me how important it is to bring that perspective to every single story that I do. And so, we were doing everything from home, but I found that when I was from home, there were some athletes that were really vulnerable and really willing to open up, not just because of COVID-19, but because of the social justice movements that were going on and share stories that absolutely needed to be told. And so I was, of course, like I said, everything changed for all of us, but I was honored that a lot of the athletes trusted me with their stories. And I think that their voice mattered in that time, and it matters all the time. But in that time, when there's so few distractions, voices that mattered were being elevated and being heard. And I think that, I was honored by some of the stories I was able to tell, especially at the beginning of the pandemic. Because they mattered so much more than who wins a game and who loses and things like that. It went way beyond that. And so for me, that stands out now that we're, 2 years removed from the beginning of that. That's the thing that stands out the most, is that I was very, very honored by the stories that I was able to share and help facilitate the conversations I was able to help facilitate that hopefully made a difference.
Yeah, I really love the way you put that, just elevating those stories that really need to be heard. Well, AJ, thank you so much for being here. I just want to ask one last question to you. For our younger sportscasters, people just getting into the industry, albeit news or sports, what advice do you have?
I think my advice is just to find your voice, right? Like I've always known, like it's taken a while to sort of chip away at the jobs and what you can do and how you can really make your voice the majority of your job. But I think that, I'm never going to be someone who thrives in data and analytics and stat breakdown. That's never going to be my passion. That's never going to be my strength. My strength is in my storytelling. And so I think the advice that I would give is just to figure out what your voice is. What is your strength? What is the mark that you want to leave in this industry? Because there's plenty of room. Like your voice matters, but don't try to be someone else's voice, right? Like figure out what yours is, hone in on that, and make sure that every step along the way, you check it against whatever that passion is, right? Like you can't come out of the gates and necessarily get your dream job. But if the job you're getting or the next job is the one that chips away a little bit more and focuses a little bit more on what your voice is, then it's a good next step. I think that when I was really young, I got caught up in watching everybody else's journey because it's such a public sphere, right? Like, what everyone else is doing. And if I could go back and tell myself, hey, just focus on your thing, find your voice, hone in on that, and the next job will come, the next opportunity will come. I think that would have saved me certainly a lot of angst when I was first starting and a lot of, desire to rush through to the next thing, but to find your voice where you're at and make sure that you know who you are in this space, and to check every job against that once you know what your voice is.
I love that, just finding your strengths and aligning that with what you do. It's just so important. Well, thank you so much for your time, AJ. Congratulations on your award, a 2021 Oregon Sportscaster of the Year. We hope to see you in Winston this summer too.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.